Welcome back to the Investing Talk podcast. Today we're going to be taking a look at EON and Resources,
Okay.
ticker symbol EONR. And, this company has been making some pretty big waves recently, some
hmm
really dramatic stock swings.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we're here to help you understand, what's driving all of that.
Yeah, for sure. I think one of the most interesting things about EON Resources is that they're in the oil and gas industry,
Oh.
which is an industry that's facing a ton of changes right now. And so I think understanding, that kind of broader context is really important when you start to look at this company.
Yeah, absolutely. And, speaking in context, EON Resources is a relatively small company. Their market cap is only about $11.42 million.
Right.
But they've been making some big moves lately, especially with this expansion into renewable energy.
Yeah, and that's a really key point, I think, because that move into renewables, it seems like that's generating a lot of excitement among investors,
Yeah.
If you look at what happened on January 8th, 2025, when they announced, a major acquisition to grow their renewable energy portfolio, their stock price jumped by over 48%.
Wow.
So that right there, that tells you investors are paying attention.
For sure.
They're
Yeah.
looking at companies that are embracing these sustainable solutions.
Yeah, it's fascinating, isn't it? I mean, you've got this company hitting a 52-week low of 51 cents back in October,
Right.
and then soaring to $6 in December, and now they're making this bold move into renewables.
Exactly.
It's a roller coaster ride. And I think for investors, it really raises some important questions.
Absolutely. Yeah, that kind of volatility, I mean, that can be a red flag.
Yeah.
It signals some potential risks, but it also kind of hints at the potential rewards
Right.
that some investors are seeing in their growth strategy. So it's this really delicate balance.
Yeah, for sure. So let's dig into the financials a little bit, shall we?
Sure.
So their latest earnings report from Q3 2024 showed revenue of $7.4 million,
Mm,
which is actually their highest ever. But uh, as is often the case, there's a little bit of a catch.
you're right. Yeah, they still reported a net loss of $3.8 million for that quarter.
Okay.
And then if you look back over the past 12 months, the losses are even more significant,
Uh,
totaling around $22.11 million.
so they're generating revenue, but they're struggling to turn a profit.
Right.
So that raises the question, are these just growing pains or are there deeper operational challenges that we need to be thinking about?
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question, right? I think to answer that, you have to look at the bigger picture.
Okay.
The company has been spending a lot of money on infrastructure upgrades, and they recently hit a pretty big production milestone,
Oh, really?
over 1,000 barrels of oil per day.
That sounds promising.
Yeah, it is. It definitely is. But is it enough to make a real difference to their bottom line?
Yeah.
That's what we're going to be watching for in their upcoming earnings report, which is
Huh.
due out on February 15th.
Okay.
But there's another piece of the puzzle, too, I think we should talk about.
Yep.
Their funding agreement with Endstream Capital Management.
Yeah, that $22.5 million deal
Yeah.
from December 2nd, 2024.
Right.
Can you tell us a little bit more about that and what it means for their plans?
Yeah, so this funding is specifically for developing 45 new wells in New Mexico.
Okay.
And it's a pretty significant investment that could, increase their oil production quite a bit.
Wow.
So potentially, leading to higher revenue and hopefully a path towards profitability.
Right. So we've got this push for renewable energy on one hand,
Right.
and then we've got this effort to increase traditional oil production on the other.
Exactly.
It's an interesting strategy.
It is. It's a really interesting strategy, and it reflects how complex the energy sector is today.
Yeah.
Companies are really trying to navigate a world that's increasingly focused on clean energy, but we're still so reliant on those fossil fuels.
Absolutely. So we've talked about their recent performance,
Right.
their big acquisition news, their
Yeah.
funding deals, and their production goals.
Mm.
But how does all of this fit into the overall market landscape?
That's such a good point because, while the S&P 500 has been making gains after a period of uncertainty,
Yeah.
EON Resources has actually underperformed compared to both the broader market and its own industry.
So what's the takeaway there? Does that indicate that there's some investor caution specifically towards EON Resources, or is there something else going on?
It's probably a combination of factors, right? I mean, their volatility, their recent losses, and their high debt levels.
Mm-hmm.
That's definitely making some investors a little hesitant.
Right.
However, there are some investors out there who really believe that these strategic moves, especially in renewable energy,
Right.
could lead to some really big long-term gains.
Okay.
It's a situation with a lot of potential for both risk and reward.
Okay, so we've got this mix of positive and negative signals.
Yeah.
So now let's take a look at the technical indicators.
Okay.
What are the charts telling us about their stock?
Well, when we look at the technical analysis, there are a few things that I think suggest that some caution is warranted.
Yeah.
For example, both the 50-day and the 200-day simple moving averages, also known as SMAs,
Right.
are currently giving us a sell signal.
It's a sell signal. Okay, that sounds pretty bearish.
Yeah, it's not great.
What are the actual numbers that we're looking at?
So the 50-day SMA is at 89 cents, and the 200-day SMA is at $1.82.
Okay.
And these averages represent, the stock's average price over those respective periods.
Right.
So the fact that EON Resources is currently trading below both of those averages, that suggests a downward trend.
Okay, so the moving averages aren't looking great.
Yeah.
What about the relative strength index? What's that telling us?
Yeah, so the RSI is currently around 44.67, which is interesting, because it's not quite in oversold territory,
Mm-hmm.
but it's not exactly screaming buy either.
Kind of a neutral signal.
Exactly. Yeah, I would say it's pretty neutral. It suggests that the stock isn't, particularly attractive at the moment,
Okay.
but it's not necessarily a reason to panic and sell either.
Gotcha.
Now, the moving average convergence divergence, or the MACD,
Right.
that's giving us a slightly more bearish signal.
Okay.
It's currently negative at negative 0.04,
Okay.
and that hints at some potential downward momentum in the short term.
All right, so the technical indicators are painting kind of a mixed but generally cautious picture.
Yes.
We've got sell signals from the SM
Mm-hmm.
as a neutral RSI and a bearish MECD.
Mm-hmm.
What about support and resistance levels? What should investors be looking at?
So right now, the key support level is around 82 cents, and then the resistance level is at $1.79.
So if the stock dips below 82 cents, that could signal further decline. But if it breaks above $1.79, then we might see some upward momentum.
Exactly.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So now let's talk about expert opinions. What are analysts saying about EON Resources?
So it's kind of a mixed bag, as you might expect. Some analysts are taking this wait-and-see approach. They're recommending a hold rating on the stock.
Mhm.
Basically, they're saying, let's see what happens with the next earnings report
Yeah.
before making any big decisions,
Makes sense.
which is a reasonable stance given all the uncertainty around the company's profitability.
Yeah.
And, the impact of these recent acquisitions. It's always wise to get more information before you make a big move.
For sure. And then on the other side of the coin, you've got analysts who are seeing some real opportunity in EON Resources' move towards renewable energy
Yes,
and their investments in new technology.
absolutely.
They recognize the risks,
Yeah.
but they believe that EON Resources has what it takes to really grow in this
Yeah.
rapidly changing energy sector.
It's a classic high risk, high reward situation.
Yeah.
And investors really have to weigh those potential long-term gains against the very real possibility of ongoing volatility and those near-term losses.
Yeah. All right. So for our listeners out there who are trying to figure out, if EON Resources is worth keeping on their radar or maybe even adding to their portfolio, what's the key takeaway?
This is where you really have to, do your own research.
Yeah,
Think about your risk tolerance and decide if this company aligns with your investment goals.
exactly. And we're not in the business of giving financial advice.
Right.
We're here to help you ask the right questions and make informed decisions.
Absolutely.
So from everything that we've talked about today, what do you think is like the most significant point?
For me, it's that tension between their traditional oil and gas operations and their push into renewables. It's like they're trying to bridge these two very different worlds.
Yeah.
And each world has its own hurdles and possibilities.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's a key takeaway for me as well. And it makes their next earnings report all the more crucial.
Right.
Are they going to show any signs of turning the financial performance around? Will those investments in renewables and that increased production,
Right.
are they going to actually generate real returns?
Right. Those are the big questions.
Those are the questions.
All eyes are going to be on February 15th to see what happens, what the next chapter holds for this company.
Absolutely. Well, that brings us to the end of our look at EON Resources.
Yeah,
We've covered a lot of ground today.
we have.
Their recent financial performance, their strategic moves,
Mm-hmm.
the overall market context,
Yeah.
and those expert opinions.
We've explored the technical indicators, we've weighed the potential risks and rewards, and hopefully we've given you the information that you need to start forming your own conclusions about this company.
Exactly. This is just a starting point for your own research.
Yeah,
Dig deeper into the topics that we discussed today.
absolutely.
Consider your investment goals
Mm-hmm.
and just make sure that any decisions that you make are well informed.
Definitely. And be sure to tune into our next episode,
Yeah.
where we'll be tackling another fascinating company that's making waves in the market.
Until then, happy investing. And don't forget to subscribe to the Investing Talk podcast so you never miss an episode.
Hit that notification bell to stay up to date on our latest episodes.
And if you found this episode helpful, we would love for you to share it with your fellow investors.
Yes, spread the knowledge.
Yeah, let's spread the knowledge and empower more people to navigate this exciting world of the stock market.
And we always love to hear your thoughts and insights.
Yeah.
So be sure to leave a comment below and tell us what you think about EONR. Is this a company you would consider adding to your watch list?
Yeah, or maybe you have a different perspective on their strategy.
Right.
Let's keep this conversation going.
Thanks for joining us today on the Investing Talk podcast. Until next time, happy investing.
See ya. And on the other side of the coin, you've got these analysts who are seeing a real opportunity in EON Resources' move toward renewable energy and their investments in new technology.
Absolutely.
They recognize the risks,
Yeah.
but they believe that EON Resources has what it takes to really grow in this rapidly changing energy sector.
Yeah. It's a classic high-risk, high-reward situation.
Yeah.
You know, investors really have to weigh the potential for long-term gains against the very real possibility of, ongoing volatility and those near-term losses.
Right. So for our listeners out there who are trying to figure out if EON Resources is worth keeping on their radar or even adding to their portfolio, what's the key takeaway here?
I think this is where you really have to do your own research.
Yeah.
And think about, what's your risk tolerance? And does this company align with your investment goals?
Exactly. And, we're not in the business of giving financial advice.
Right.
We're here to help you ask the right questions and make informed decisions.
Absolutely.
So from everything that we've talked about today, what do you think is the most significant point?
For me, it's that tension between their traditional oil and gas operations and this push into renewables.
Yeah.
It's almost like they're trying to bridge these two very different worlds,
Right.
each of which has its own hurdles and possibilities.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that's a key takeaway for me as well. And it makes their next earnings report even more crucial.
Right.
Are they going to show signs of turning their financial performance around? Are those investments in renewables and that increase in production, are they going to actually generate real returns?
Those are the big questions.
Those are the big questions.
All eyes will be on February 15th to see, what happens next for EON Resources.
Absolutely. Well, that brings us to the end of our look at EON Resources.
Yeah,
We covered a lot of ground today.
we did.
Their recent financial performance, their strategic moves,
Mm.
the overall market context, and those expert opinions.
We looked at the technical indicators. We weighed those potential risks and rewards.
Right.
And hopefully we've given you the information that you need to start, forming your own conclusions about this company.
Exactly. This is really just a starting point for your own research.
Right.
Dig deeper into these topics.
Absolutely.
Consider your investment goals
Mm.
and just make sure that any decisions you make are well informed.
Absolutely. And make sure you tune in for our next episode,
Yes.
where we'll be, looking at another fascinating company that's making some waves.
Until then, happy investing. And don't forget to subscribe to the Investing Talk podcast so you never miss an episode.
Yeah, and hit that notification bell to stay up to date on all our latest episodes.
And if you found this episode helpful, we'd love for you to share it with your fellow investors.
Yes, spread the knowledge.
Let's spread the knowledge and help empower more people to navigate the world of investing.
And we always want to hear your thoughts.
Yes.
So be sure to leave a comment down below and tell us what you think about EONR. Is this a company you would consider adding to your watch list?
Yeah, or maybe you have a different perspective on their strategy. Let's keep the conversation going.
Thanks for joining us today on the Investing Talk podcast. Until next time, happy investing.
And that wraps up our discussion on EON Resources.
A company that certainly has a lot going on.
A lot of potential. They've got this big acquisition in the renewable energy sector.
Yeah, definitely a company to keep an eye on for sure.
Their next earnings report is coming up on February 15th, 2025.
Right.
So we'll get a clearer picture of their financial health and, what direction they're headed in.
Absolutely. Until then, do your research.
Yes.
See if EONR is a good fit for your portfolio.
Thanks for listening to the Investing Talk podcast.
Yeah, be sure to subscribe.
So you never miss an episode.
And share this one with anyone who might be interested in learning more about EON Resources.
Thanks for joining us.
Happy investing, everyone.